right, hi guys. This is our first video with the notes. It's going to come in 3 parts because the notes are 3 pages. I tried to space it out, give lots of room to write for those that might want to print it out at home. Again, it's not a requirement, but there's just lots of space for those that would want to. So to go ahead and get things started, we are starting our geometry section of college algebra to get ready for that part of your TSI test. Now, a lot of this should be familiar because, again, it was your sophomore year roughly when you took geometry. So this is just really, again, like everything else, a review over some of this older vocabulary. All right, so in geometry, some of the first vocab words that you were introduced to were what we called those undefined terms because they don't necessarily have a definition. They just have a description of what they are. That first word being a point. Like it says their definition, but again, mostly a description. Points are used to represent specific locations. If you're looking on a map, their points are usually represented as dots. So when we look at the actual figures, some of the things you're going to be seeing will be dots. And usually they're going to be accompanied by a capital letter. All right, points always are going to have capital current letters. Okay, not cursive, not lowercase. They have got to be a capital current letter. Okay, now when we name that object with just a dot and a capital letter, we physically have to use the word point. Sorry guys, there's no other option. There's not a symbol for a point. So this picture, dot with a capital P, would be read as point P. All right, our second undefined term that we have is a line. And like it says there in the definition, which again is just a description. All right, lines are things that they connect a straight path that continues infinitely in opposite directions. Now, a couple of requirements are needed for to make a line. We have to have at least 2 points to make this line. Okay, it doesn't matter where the 2 points are. They could be far apart like mine are. They could be close together. As long as you have at least 2 of them, you can make a line. You can connect them to make a line. Now, since we are in fact needing 2 points to make this line, those points have to have names because those names are very important. So right now for this line at each point, let's say we have an A and a B, capital A, capital B. All right, so like I said, we need 2 points to make this line. That's one requirement. Okay, the other option we have to make a line is going to be a lowercase letter out by one of those arrows. It does not matter which arrow. So I've got space over on the right, so I'm going to put my line over on my letter over on the right. Now, this one is in cursive. This is a cursive lowercase l. All right. So again, if it's out by the arrow, it needs to be lowercase and cursive. Now, how do I know the difference between the cursive letter if it's out by an arrow or if it's actually a capital letter by a dot? The clue there is the dot. If the letter does not have any dots around it and it doesn't appear to be a capital letter, then that could be a name for a line. It could be a lowercase cursive one. Now, you've got some options here when wanting to name a line. If you remember from geometry, you can use any 2 points on the line. They don't have to be the one at the beginning and the end. They don't have to be the 2 in the middle. Any 2 on that line will work. So they are going to have, pick your 2 letters. In this case, I've got an A and a B. So capital A, capital B if we're using the points, and we draw a teeny tiny line above it. Now, those 2 letters could be reversed. Order is not important here. So I could have capital B, capital A. And again, as long as it's got the teeny tiny little line above it. Any 2 points, again, on that line are fine. The other option we have is to physically use the word line with that lowercase cursive letter. That's your other option. Okay, and that's the only ways we can name these, either with the symbol and 2 points or with the word line and the lowercase cursive letter. All right, our last undefined term is our third one down there. which is called a plane. Now, planes are typically displayed as a certain shape. Sometimes the parallelogram, I've seen it done with a triangle before, but the requirements needed to make a plane is that it is a flat surface. So think about your walls in the house. Those are surfaces. Your table, dining room table, is a surface. The counter next to your oven or your stove, that is a surface. That's considered a plane. Now, difference between a plane and a line. Lines just extend infinitely in opposite directions. Planes are infinite in all directions, okay? In all directions. Now, requirements to make this plane. We need at least 3 points. And to be even more specific, those 3 points cannot line up. Okay, those 3 points cannot line up with one line. There could also be a line on your plane. There could be other items on this plane. But again, these are all things that are on the surface. Now, to make this plane, like I said, minimum 3 points. Other items could be there, but a minimum of 3 points. Okay, which we have our 3 points there. I'm going to go ahead and give those 3 points a name. Let's say we have point X, the capital X, Y, and let's say we have point Z. So there's our 3 points. Okay, there's also a line sitting on that plane, but I'm not going to go ahead, I'm not going to name it at the moment. We don't necessarily need it. But what we do need is what I'm going to write in that empty corner. Like lines, planes can have a cursive name as well. So I'm going to put a capital cursive K here. Okay, capital cursive letters are used for planes, while lowercase cursive letters are used for lines. And just like the line had 2 different ways that you could write it, one with the symbol, one with the word, similar thing here for the plane. We can have plane and then choose any 3 letters, any 3 points that are on that plane. Order does not matter. So let's say plane X, Y, and Z. Okay, and again, just to reiterate, any order of those 3 letters is fine. They don't have to be in alphabetical order, or you can use the word plane and that cursive capital letter. So in this case, plane K. They are the exact same object, just named different ways. Not always will there be the cursive letter. Not always will there be points. So you need options on how are we going to name these. All right, so those are your 3 undefined terms. Again, they just have descriptions. All the other vocabulary that we're going to be working on today are going to use one of those 3 words. They're all going to be part of it. So let's add to our vocabulist real quick. All right. Now, we also have what's called a line segment and array. So the difference between these two, line segment, as it says there, sometimes called just a segment, is a part of a line with 2 endpoints. It has a beginning and it has an end. So this time I'm going to name these 2 pieces. Let's say we have M and N. And again, we've got 2 those are called your endpoints. Okay, those are your endpoints. To name the segment, you have to use those points. There's no other option here. Right? There is no little lowercase cursive letter out by those ends. You have to use those endpoints. So right now we are looking at segment MN. So use those 2 ends with a little bar on top. You can reverse it in M, and you're still talking about the same object. Okay, we're going to see one in a minute where you cannot reverse the letters. Okay, we're going to see one in a second that you cannot reverse the order. But again, big thing to remember here with segments is you must use the endpoints. Okay, to make these names, you have to use the endpoints. All right. Now, the other one we've got as a part of those definitions is the ray. All right, like it says specifically there, a ray is a part of a line that continues infinitely in one direction. It doesn't always have to go to the right. It doesn't always have to go left or up or down, but it's continuing in one single direction. Now, for this one, we do have to be specific with how we name. Since I do have an end point, one end point, I need the name of that one endpoint. So in this case, I'm going to call it point J. So I have to use J in the name. That's my one restriction. The other letter on part of this name comes from any other point that's on the line or on the ray, sorry. It could be the one closest to the arrow. It could be one in the middle. It could be right up next to point J if I really wanted it to be. Any other point on that ray will be used in the name. And all that second point really is for is to tell me what direction is it pointing in the picture. So right now I have used my endpoint first, any other dot that's on it, and then we draw a little ray above it. Okay, but again, just keep in mind, endpoint must be first. Okay, endpoint first. All right, so I want to take a second and just look at a couple of pictures that we're going to name, and then that'll be the end of part one, and then part two will come up here shortly. So let's look at our objects we have and let's name these. All right, so I'm looking at the dot with the letter A next to it. So like we saw up above, there is no symbol for a point, so we call this just point, and then whatever the letter is that accompanies it, which is our A, so point A. All right, second picture right below, I've got arrows at each end, so this tells me I'm looking at a line. I've got 2 points on that line, so I know I can use those 2 points with a little line symbol above it. Another option, reverse it. So line BC can be reversed and called line CB. Both of them have to have that little arrow. Now, looking out at one of the arrows, there is a little Q here. That Q is in cursive, and there is no dot anywhere near that Q. This is the way that uses the word line and the Q. So there's 3 ways to name that picture. Not always will the cursive letter be there. Sometimes the points may not be there. So it's just an option on how to name that figure. All right, our next one over, we've got a boxed in surface here. So then this is our plane. We've got 3 dots inside this plane, H, F, and G, so I can use those to name it. Again, order does not matter. F, H, G, any order of those 3 letters is fine. But if we notice, there's something over here in the corner. And in the corner, there are no dots anywhere near that letter. So then it is also a plane name. So then we can call this plane J. That is a cursive J. So just imagine as if the other side of that top was there. All right, this is also plane J. Right underneath that is a picture with one end and an arrow pointing only to the left. So this has to be my ray. So when we name a ray, the end point has to be first. So in this case, my end point is out here on the right. So that letter must be first. So E has to be first. The only other dot on this ray is D. And it has the little ray symbol above it. That's the only option we have. Okay, that is the only option we have to name it. All right, our last picture that we have for part one doesn't have any arrows at either end. It's just got 2 points. This is your segment. Okay, this is your segment. So we use the 2 end letters. We have no other choice. So L, K with a little bar on top. You can reverse that, KL. Same thing, a little bar on top. So those are all of our objects that we needed to name. So guys, that's the end of part one. Again, I'll be posting part 2 here in just a little while. So I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you contact me if you have any questions on how to name any of these objects. All right. Thanks, guys.